After that, the directive of exovol changed dramatically. With the situation of the two warring vessels dealt with, both captains traveled back towards their ships. The captain of the cruiser even gave some payment to the captain of the freighter in order to cover the damages to his ship. After having a talk with Mika, she agreed to allow him to take the bounty for her former captain, so long as she could still kill him. His bounty was for dead or alive, dead being Mika's preferred option. The Tier 1 ship was still too big to dock with exovol, and wasn't fast enough to keep up with them at maximum warp, light speed. So, exovol formed a set of nanite cables and constructed something that would hold the small vessel in place and allow it to travel along with exovol during light speed travel. With nanotech at their disposal, they were able to do so fairly quickly, only taking about an hour or two to establish a simple construct that would keep the ship in place. Afterwards, they traveled with maximum speed back to the place where it all began for Mika. It took nearly a week of travel, maxing out exovol's engines in order to get there. And when they arrived in the space junkyard, they immediately set out, scanning for biological remnants within the scrap heap, spending several days doing so. They did finally find some biological material that was picked up on the scanner, but what they found was not Mika's old captain, but a collection of bodies, dozens of them. They brought the bodies aboard to check them over. Most of them seemed to have died from exposure to space, only a few seeming to have been killed in other ways. 3 of them were killed with weapons fire, while the last, one who seemed to bear markings designating him as the captain of a ship, seemed to have had his neck broken. After checking over all of the bodies, one crew member in particular had a data pad with him when he was thrown out into space. Mika walked up to Dr. Ricola as she removed the data pad, handing it over to Captain Mika, while the captain of the cruiser stood beside her as they performed the last of the checks on the people that they found floating in the debris field. As she opened the data pad and began to check it over, it seemed to be an inventory manifest, at least mostly, a schedule for dumping useless debris. Apparently, a ship was charged with dumping off a fair amount of garbage in the territory, after which they were to receive payment for disposal of the useless goods, with only one more piece to the information on the data pad, what appeared to be a recording, a video log entered by the person holding the data pad. Mika clicked the data log to play it, as the individual's face, that of the one lying on the table in front of her, appeared. He seemed to be crying and sobbing. "Hello? I managed to sneak this data pad before he locked us into the docking bay of the ship. He says that he's going to take us to a nearby planet and let us go. But I don't think he's going to," the man said with tears in his eyes. "So this is to my family. I hope that someone finds us the way we found him. And when you do, I hope you can take this message to my family, my beautiful daughter and beloved son, my wife, Marama, I love all of you. We tried to do a good deed. We detected a life sign, one out in space. It was exceptionally faint. Whilst we were performing our dump, we thought it might be somebody who had to eject himself from a damaged ship, perhaps in a spacesuit that was running low, but it turned out to be a man floating in space. We brought him on board, and the ship doctor determined that once he unthawed, he would be fine, despite the injuries he seemed to have had before he was ejected into space. The man acted quite friendly, at least at first, but it didn't take him long to show his true colors. The moment he got the opportunity, he grabbed hold of the captain, using him as a human shield, grasping his weapon and killing all 3 of the security members on board the ship, and then killing the captain as well. He then forced all of us to the docking bay by systematically turning off all life support systems in every area of the ship, one by one, until there was no place left but the docking bay. He said he just needed us all in one place, that he'd keep us alive, but I don't think he's going to honor his word. He doesn't seem like the type. So, if these are to be my last words, then I want you to know, I want my family to know, that beyond all things, your father, your husband, loves you truly. He said into the data pad he was holding in his hands, shaking somewhat, tears dropping onto the pad as a voice began to emit in the background amongst the muttering of other crew members, a voice that Mika recognized all too well. Well, hello all of you very nice people. I must say I do appreciate you saving my balls. If I had just kept floating out there forever, then who knows, I might have just been smashed to pieces by some floating rubble. It does happen out here. Mid-space collisions between garbage at float. So for that, you have my sincere thanks. Unfortunately, when I said that I was going to drop you off on a nice safe world, well, I'll just cut to the chase. I was lying my ass off. I do thank you for the ship, but as far as you guys, you're fucking useless. And having you on board is only really gonna slow me down. But to show my appreciation for saving my ass, pulling me out of the metaphorical fire, even though technically space is ice cold, I'll let your death be a fast one, and you can all go as a team. The voice shouted, as suddenly there was a rush of air, or maybe a rush of the lack of it. As there was rapid flurry of movement, things became jumbled, hard to tell what was going on, and by the time the image settled, all they could see was darkness and the stars and junk surrounding them on all sides, as with the last bit of movement that he could muster, seeing the exterior of his body freezing in the cold vacuum of space, he managed to turn off the data pad so that its power wouldn't drain away and his final message would be saved. Mika stared at the data pad for a moment after the recording ended, before sealing it shut once more, handing it back over to Dr. Ricola. Dr. Ricola, have you determined what race these people are? There is no need for an examination. I am familiar with them. They are botmen. Their home world is nearby. Good. If you know its location, then communicate that information to the bridge. Tell them that I gave the order to set course. We're going to bring these people back home. Along with their bodies, give them the data pad once we arrive. As for you, Captain, she said, looking over to the captain of the cruiser, the bounty hunter here to collect Mika's former captain's head. I'm sorry, but your bounty isn't here. It appears that we were too late, so he's still alive and still killing people. After we drop these people off at home, so that their funerals can be handled by their own kind, in whatever way their families see fit. I understand that you have a vested interest in finding him. Tell me, do you intend to continue the search? Or would it be too much for the pay that you're receiving for the job? To be honest, the amount of money that I was afforded for the bounty was only valuable enough to pay attention to when I was right next to Pyrrhus, so it'd be easy to transfer. But it's not really enough for me to go on an expedited search for him. I tend to simply wander areas where pirates tend to be and catch them off guard. Long-term hunts aren't my specialty, and his bounty isn't worth it. Fine, do as you like. You can detach now, or once we drop these people off. The choice is yours. But based on the data transmission on that pad, he obviously got help within a few days of me leaving. There's no telling how far he could have gotten. And I have no such requirement for money in hunting him down, so I'll be going after him. I suppose this is where we part ways. I bid you a farewell, because now it's hunting season, Mika said as she walked away, exiting the medical bay doors with sheer murderous intent written on her face.